Chapter 6 Brother. It was a beautiful, sunny autumn afternoon. It was recess, and I was out on the kindergarten section of the playground with my classmates. I was very happy and skipping around in a circle, singing, "My brother's 10, my brother's 10," round and round, over and over again. It was my brother's birthday. I was 5 years old. In just another year I'd be 6 and have a new baby sister, but it felt like there was a long period of time that it was just brother and me. Maybe this was because it takes a few years before a baby becomes a kid who you can actually have a conversation with, and my sister is hearing impaired, so quality speech came a little later for her. So in a way, sister wasn't a truly relevant personality in our lives until I was nearly 9 and brother was in high school, if that makes sense. Brother was a very smart kid, an old soul who enjoyed big band as a younger teen when other kids enjoyed rock and roll. I remember one day at school naively blurting out with pride that my brother likes big band. The tall kid with the heavy metal t-shirt had something super rude to say about that, and I'll leave that to your imagination, but I was shocked and offended. I couldn't understand why his music choice made him anything less than cool and sophisticated. Brother went through a phase of taking everything apart. His clock, an old radio. He'd build really interesting things with Lego, like the time he made an aero car suspended on a line of twine he'd strung across his room. He's always had an interest in woodworking and has meticulously built some beautiful things. And for the record, did also like rock and roll. And there were songs that I still don't enjoy to this day, because if brother liked a song, he played it to death. He played it until you almost wanted to run away from home. He has always been a very smart, very interesting person. Smart and interesting, yes, but also my brother was a pain in the ass when we were kids, and that's putting it mildly. He bugged me relentlessly. Mom would have talks with him all the time. "Can't you just leave your sister alone?" "Okay," he would say, and at the time he truly meant it, and he would truly want to, but he just seemed unable to. It was endless stupid stuff, like holding his cereal bowl over my head and saying, "I'm gonna pour the milk on your head." "Mom! Brother's gonna pour the milk on my head!" Mom, annoyed, "No, he's not." Brother, "Yes, I am." Me, "Mom, he says he is. Don't listen to him." There used to be free magazines at the movies. Do they still have those? They would have adverts for coming attractions, little articles about current movies, behind-the-scenes tidbits, etc. One year in the late 70s, a horror movie came out about a possessed ventriloquist dummy. Commercials advertising the movie were shown on TV. One of the commercials just featured the dummy, and as the camera zoomed in on him, he yapped away about sinister stuff involving magic. His last line was something like, "Hocus pocus, now you're dead." And then his dummy eyes rolled back in his dummy head. Well, that was that. I completely lost my shit when I saw that commercial, and lived in fear of any future returns of that horrifying dummy to the TV. Brother had gone to the movies around that time with friends, and he had one of those movie marquee magazines. It just so happened to have an advert poster for that movie in it, with a picture of the dummy, of course. Brother taunted endlessly that one night when I was sleeping, he was going to sneak into my room and tape that picture to my wall. "Ah! No! Ah! No! Please! Please don't! Mom!" Brother chuckling, "Okay, I won't." "Do you promise?" "I promise." But then he'd be back to threatening me with the dummy poster, and if he wasn't doing that, he'd look at me, get my attention, and say, "Hocus pocus, now you're dead," and roll his eyes back in his head. I'd freak. Ha ha ha, just kidding. There was another movie out around that time about a couple who had a baby that was actually a monster. The TV commercial showed an old-fashioned baby buggy with a 2-fingered claw hand hanging over the side, and as it zoomed in on that, some chilling, loud heartbeat sound effect. Once again, I flipped my lid every time that commercial came on. Brother honed in on this right away, so when he felt like it, he'd catch my attention, then start to mimic the commercial. Bump, 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 imitating heartbeat sounds. Me, losing it. Ah! Stop it! Mom! Stop bugging your sister! He was the kind of brother who'd sit on your chest and dangle spit strings over your face, suck it back up, dangle it back down. One of them plopped directly into my eye one time. He was genuinely sorry, but also beyond hysterically amused. Don't tell Mom! Don't tell Mom! Hardly able to get the words out as he died laughing. There was many a time I can clearly remember saying loudly and emphatically that I hate him. Mom didn't like that. No, you don't. Don't say that, she said. Yes, I do. No, you don't. Quietly now so Mom can't hear. Yes, I do. He was a complicated mix of total pest mixed with very caring brother underneath the layers of pest. When our parents would go out on Friday or Saturday nights, no, we don't know where the hell our sister was in these memories. We'd have a great time making couch cushion forts, or taking all the cushions from all the couches in the house, stacking them, and creating the ultimate high and precarious seat. The roof of the cushion fort would most likely be the barf blanket. The barf blanket got its name from both its awful barfy orangey gold color, and because that was the blanket that came out when we were both on the couch enjoying a bout of the stomach flu. There was also a barf bucket that was used for those fun times, but I digress. We'd both be sitting in that cozy couch fort that we, mostly brother, had built. And I know our sister was around, somewhere, when our parents would be out, because sometimes we'd have a war, and that meant we were supposed to throw things at each other over our cushion barricades. Brother had too good of a time pinging me with sister's plastic toddler toy shapes. The ones that had a hole on one side and a knob on the other, and they could be connected as a chain. Invariably, one would hit me on the head. I'd get pissed and say, "That's it! I was done!" Brother would plead for me to keep playing, apologizing profusely as he died laughing. Okay, the games would begin again. He'd throw lightly at first, but then he'd start whipping them again. The cycle would repeat. Those nights had fun moments, though. We'd enjoy our chips and dip together, Tupperware bowl of chips with onion dip, and a Tupperware primary color cup with cola and ice while watching the Dukes of Hazzard, or the killer back-to-back Saturday night combo of The Love Boat followed by Fantasy Island. We'd cringe and hide our faces behind a throw pillow together if there were any unbearable kissy scenes in any movie or show we were watching. Sometimes brother would make us do really unpleasant challenges for fun, like see how long we could sit with a mouthful of mouthwash before our burning mouths and watering eyes forced us to run for the sink. Once he made us ice cream floats, and I bugged him to make them every weekend thereafter for ages. He'd do crazy things too, like take his socks off and see how far he could make it down our snow-covered backyard in his bare feet, running out like a maniac, then racing back in high-spirited agony. We had a long backyard too, so that was pretty exciting. I got to know all of the Star Trek episodes because he was a major fan. He was an ultimate youthful Trekkie who could name any episode within about 3 seconds, knew all the details of all the episodes, all the characters, you name it. One of the episodes had a lady in it who would turn into a horrible salt monster and suck the salt out of her victims. I did not appreciate that episode, but I was never as confident of each episode as brother was. So I'd be sitting there, not trusting my intuition with that little alarm bell going off in my gut. "Is this the salt monster one?" I'd ask, suspicious brow creased. No, it's not that one." "Okay, good." Then a little while later, when the beautiful woman turns into the monster with the sucker mouth, "It is that one! Ah!" He knew it, but he didn't tell me because he didn't want me to leave. Ditto for the episode with the terrifying 3 witches who wailed, Captain Kirk. If you know, you know. If you don't, well, you didn't grow up with a Star Trek mega fan. So it was quite an atrocious crime I committed when I got so pissed at Brother that I ripped the arms off his Mr. Spock action figure. I found one just like it online just the past couple of years ago for a Christmas present for him. Arms and everything. Brother is the reason that, to this day, I hate Monopoly. Yes, the board game. He always got to be the car. I never got to be the car. Maybe I only wanted to be the freaking car because I could never be the car. So was anything even good after that? The thimble? The shoe? Every Monopoly game happened the same way. I would buy the first property I landed on, and every other shit property thereafter. Brother would hold out. He'd be strategic. He'd wait until he landed on one of the better properties, and then he'd start spending the money. Me? I'd be gobbling up all the crapo real estate on the board, chuckling evilly to myself, thinking I was well on my way to Monopoly world domination. I kept forgetting that even with a hotel on my garbage properties, the money he'd have to pay me would still be a pittance. Brother, however, always managed to garner a horrific reverse L of financial devastation. If you know Monopoly, then you know that the properties in the bottom right side of the board, plus the properties on the bottom of the square of the board, were the most lethal, most desirable properties of them all. Park Place, Boardwalk. Toss in some lucrative utilities and I was screwed. Funnily enough, the game wasn't very fun when you started to go broke. It became even less fun when you had to flip over your stupid, weak properties and mortgage them to get more money needed just to pay Brother. And by the time most of your properties were flipped over and mortgaged, you'd been playing for a very, very long time. He sometimes reluctantly gave over and let us end the game when I reached a strong, "I've had it!" level of being sick of it, but he wasn't too happy about it. He had some other board games he was always begging me to play. One of them was a World War II modeled game of gargantuan strategy. I wasn't a young war enthusiast, so I couldn't be conned into playing that one too often. He also had a Star Wars board game. We could never figure it out, no matter how many times Brother would read over the rules and play instructions. We'd get to the dogfight section of the board. We'd each roll our dice. I'd look at Brother. Brother would look at me. "I think you won," he'd say. "I did," I'd say. We never really knew. In the great nature versus nurture debate, was I born with a hot temper? Or did Brother bug me enough to create the fireball kid that I could be? Like I said, he bugged me. A lot. There's no true justification for my behavior, but I'll tell it like it is just the same. I would get ferociously angry. I would grab his forearm sometimes in a fit of rage, sink my little girl fingernails in, grit my teeth, and furiously breathe out the sounds as I pulsed my fingernails to the beat of that rhythmic rage chant. Teenage Brother practically spent entire summers not wearing a shirt when he was at home. In fits of pique, I would thrust my arm out straight, pivot back a bit, then bring that arm swinging forward to connect my flat, splayed hand to his bare back with a mighty slap, like a great lever of anger. Sometimes it would leave a handprint for a while after. One time, while we were both making tea, he finished taking the tea bag out of his mug and impulsively touched his hot spoon to my face. Without thinking, I sliced my teaspoon through the air and cut his arm with it. This may sound like we were monstrous little idiots with each other all the time and that my brother was horrible, but this wasn't true. I felt like in those early years we were quite similar in many ways, and we were a fairly solid team. We were both very shy and reserved. We both died a little inside when we had to go visit people with our parents, and so we stuck together. We both dashed upstairs to try to hide in our rooms whenever company came over, and died again on the inside when one of our parents would shout up and order us to come downstairs and say hello. We both shared the same views about cringeworthy things and people in an almost telepathic way. He was my big brother, and he looked out for me. I mentioned the time Brother finished the awful surprise glass of totally flat pop for me when we were at Nanny's and Papa's. He also saved me at Grandma's a few times. Listen, as far as cooking was concerned, my grandmother made some absolutely amazing things, and never, it seemed, with a written recipe. She made the most delicious sweet yeast breads, one with a filling of walnuts and sugar swirled through, a poppy seed one that was just plain with a few raisins here and there. She made these delicious yeast buns with an apple pie filling, wonderful homemade donuts, something that we called meat buns, which may sound weird, but were these incredible deep-fried buns with a savory meat filling. So yeah, Grandma was an excellent cook. However, so sorry, Grandma, her homemade cakes in the early years were the tallest, densest, heaviest layer cakes you can imagine. One of the family favorites, and I believe was Grandpa's birthday cake choice every year, was Black Forest cake. Frigging Black Forest cake. A layer of chocolate cake, a layer of cooked cherries, another layer of cake, a thick, fudgy chocolate layer on top, and a thick layer of whipped cream over that. Yes, I know what you're thinking. What the hell is wrong with that? Well, imagine a cake that felt like it was a foot tall and epically dense and heavy. Now imagine that even though you're a little kid, your grandma has cut you a giant piece and served it up with a half-liter of homogenized full-fat milk. 16 ounces if you're not into liters. It's a tad rich. If we didn't finish that cake, it didn't matter that it was actually too much cake for a kid. Grandma was legit offended. So there were times, as Brother and I sat on the couch watching TV, and the adults were in the kitchen, that I'd look at him with wide, frightened eyes and whisper, "I can't finish it." Brother would finish that cake for me, and the milk too, if needed. One time, Grandma made a mocha cake. I don't remember her ever making a mocha cake. It was very fancy, I guess, and had this pale brown frosting. I'd never had mocha before. I didn't even know what mocha was. I was living in a very clearly defined world of chocolate and vanilla as far as white versus brown cakes were concerned. It was this sky-high 50-pound number with this rich, thick, creamy frosting, which I guess was kind of coffee chocolate flavor, but landed on my immature taste buds as a weak, greasy, completely unchocolatey chocolate. I took one bite, and my throat closed up. I couldn't handle any of that slice that I had before me. Brother finished it all, even though he had his own piece to contend with. He could be awesome like that. He took me out to the corner store once and bought me a slushie, and I thought the whole experience was so amazing I bugged him for weeks, asking if we could go again sometime. When I was in grade 1, we'd walk to and from school together most of the time. When I think about walking to and from school, a lot of those memories seem to be from the winter months. A portion of our walk was through the new subdivision, and what felt like a good stretch but was probably just a couple of torturous minutes was through a big open field behind the Lions Club. That field was no big deal in the warmer months, but it was formidable in winter. No sidewalk for years, just that big open field with the Arctic wind whistling right into your face as we walked to school. It's reminiscent of that old cliche, "Back in my day, we walked to school in a blizzard and uphill both ways." It wasn't uphill, but that was an unpleasant walk when it was very, very cold. When Brother wasn't walking with me anymore because he had moved on to junior high and then high school, I can picture walking through with my little sister, the neighbor girls, and a friend who we linked up with in the new subdivision. We'd all be huddled as a united front against that horrible frostbite wind, with my friend holding the tail end of my scarf over her face. I have a memory. I was 6 and Brother was 11, and we were walking home from school. It was winter, very gray, lots of snow on the ground. I don't recall any other kids around walking at the same time as us. There was a man standing off a ways, closer to the other side of the Lions Club parking lot. He was shouting to Brother, asking us something. Brother said, "No thanks," polite but serious. I was confused. We kept walking. The guy asked something again. It was creepy because there was this stranger talking to us. I didn't know what the hell he was talking about, though. And then he threw something toward us, and it landed in the snow. I, oblivious and naive, was chirping away at Brother. What did he say? What did he want? Brother, furiously trying to keep us moving along. Shh, keep going. Never mind. Me. But what did he say? Did he give something to you? Brother, keep going. Turns out, he had asked if Brother would like 50 cents to watch the guy take a leak. When Brother declined, the man nodded toward me and asked, "How about her?" Then he threw a coin or something toward us. We hustled it on home. Sometimes I think, what if I had been walking by myself? I certainly did often enough, even as a little kid. Best not to think about that. In that time period, they began clearing the land next to the field to build a large retirement complex for seniors. We all knew it as the old folks' home. The dirt they dug out was piled in our field for a bit, creating a temporary and amazing snow hill in winter. I was always bugging Brother to let us slide down the snow hill. He just wanted to get home usually, so he'd be impatient and say no. One day he actually said yes, though, so I was thrilled. As we climbed along that hill, I walked ahead and suddenly sank into the snow up to my chest. I freaked out. Go get Mom! Go get Mom! Get Mom, please! Please go get Mom, please! Get Mom! Get Mom! Brother. No! Calm down! I'm not getting Mom! He thought for a moment, and then he laid down on his side, rolled over to where I was, pulled me out, and we rolled back together. Honorable mention goes to the time I had gone on the snow hill by myself on the way home from school, and one of my shoes fell out of the milk bag I was carrying them home in. In those days, the bag that held those 3 1-liter bags of milk was the only plastic bag we had pretty much. Those bags were handy because I feel like at some point as kids, we always had a shitty pair of winter boots that leaked, and so we'd put a milk bag on one or both feet over our socks to keep our feet dry. I can still remember how uncomfortable my feet felt in my boots with plastic bags over my feet. Anyway, I got home missing one of my shoes, and Mom was not happy. For whatever reason, even though he was mostly all business about getting straight home, Brother couldn't resist the snow hill that day, and he thought one slide down couldn't hurt. Same spot I slid down. He saw a shoe in the snow and thought, that looks a lot like Karen's shoes, so he brought it home. We hung out a lot. We had this amazing imagination game we'd play together all the time. It was based on a character I created just by being a ridiculous kid. I used to think our little family dog Spooky's little dog armpits were amazing. They kind of hung down all soft and flappy, so I was happily feeling his little armpits and singing a ridiculous song about Spooky and his toothy armpits in this crazy voice. Somehow that voice evolved into a character I played called Junior Armpits. Listen, Junior Armpits was a whole thing with Brother and I. We imagined a whole entertainment empire out of that. Junior Armpits was a wholesome sitcom in the tradition of something like Leave It to Beaver. It was also a hugely popular radio show, because radio was still relevant back then. And if you were a kid born in the 70s, it's like you had one foot back in the world of the old generation and one foot in the world we live in today. So radio shows meant something. That show we did was a comedy and a drama with elements of sci-fi, whispers of the Jack Benny Show, with fourth wall, device-style repeated episodic jokes. It was everything. Junior and her brother Darling lived on Armpit Planet with their parents and assorted comic relief family members. Sometimes their planet would be invaded by the evil beings from planet Leg Pit. Total sci-fi Star Trek style influence coming through. Also, brother was pretty good at making fart sounds by cupping his hand under his knee and flinging his leg up and down. So leg armpits or leg pits were relevant to us. In every episode, viewers would get the chance to laugh at a well-loved and famously repeated joke. This involved a stranger walking by, possibly accidentally bumping into Junior and saying apologetically, "Oh, I'm sorry, little boy." Junior, "I'm a girl." Stranger, and an ugly one at that. Laugh track, "Ha ha 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 ha." Same joke every time. Another recurring joke was that sometimes Junior had to fight the Incredible Pit. Total Incredible Hulk ripoff. Brother, of course, played the role of the gigantic and enraged Incredible Pit, and for scale, my pink hippo stuffy was used to represent Junior, and also for subtle mocking of my real-life mild chubbiness. So, the Incredible Pit would be kicking and body-slamming the hippo around the room, while I offered appropriate voiceover reactions in Junior's voice. "Ow! Ow! Oh no!" As the seasons of the show progressed, Junior grew in wealth, success, and status, but always had to contend with her lifelong rival and nemesis, Smiley. Junior had her own mall and theme park, and Smiley had his own, Smiley Town, which he achieved through less than above-board means. It was during the recording of a radio show episode of Junior Armpits that Brother and I made what we thought was an amazing discovery. We were in the good living room, and Brother had the tape recorder set up and recording. We were working our way through the show when Brother paused to rip off a fart. We cracked up laughing and had to pause the tape until we could get a hold of ourselves again. Then we got excited and decided to rewind the tape so we could replay the fart. However, right at the time we should have heard the fart, we heard nothing, followed by our peal of laughter. We were dumbfounded and were left with no choice but to scientifically conclude that farts don't record. Because of that radio show recording session, we literally believed that farts didn't record for years. I mean, the proof was right there in the tape. Never mind that it was probably because he was just far enough away from the cassette recorder. It wasn't until I was in grade 7 or so, at a girlfriend's house, recording ourselves singing, when she farted during a pause. When we played the tape back, the fart could clearly be heard. Mentally, my jaw dropped, and I couldn't wait to get home to tell the news to Brother. When I told him, he was just as amazed. "What did it sound like?" he asked. I explained that it didn't sound exactly the way the fart truly had, but more of a flat kind of clap sound, like if one dropped a rock on the microphone of the cassette recorder. We were both blown away. We had an at times volatile relationship over the years, but I felt like we really understood one another. He was my brother who hated mushrooms and thought raisins made him dizzy, could not bear clothes that were the least bit scratchy, who told me about world political history while we were playing down the basement, took me for a long drive after my boyfriend had died, and told me that he felt that we are all energy, and energy can never be destroyed, so in that way my boyfriend is never truly gone. We were both quirky, smart and shy, and absolutely lacking in self-confidence. And it was okay because we were cut from that same awkward cloth.